Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your presence. We had a robust caucus meeting today featuring presentations from the White House, Cecile Rouse, the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Brian Deese, senior advisor and director with respect to the White House Economic Council, as well as from the White House Communications Director. I think we as Democrats understand, led by President Biden here in the House and over on the other side of the Capitol in the Senate, that the American people are struggling with rising costs and inflationary pressures that relate to the supply chain and relate to some price gouging that is taking place by people who worship at the altar of greed in a way that is hurting consumers, hurting farmers, hurting ranchers, and others. But the American people are feeling the pain of these inflationary pressures, and the White House is taking decisive action. It's also why it's important for us to get the Build Back Better Act over the finish line. The Build Back Better Act will lower costs for hardworking Americans, lower child care costs, lower energy costs, and lower health care costs, including the high price of life-saving prescription drugs, and relieve the pressure that everyday Americans are experiencing. And it's a shame that instead of working with Democrats to try to address the issues confronting the American people with respect to inflation, they continue to fan the flames of dissension and focus on everything other than jobs, the economy, and inflation. But we're going to continue to get our work done for the people. Later on this afternoon, we will take up the censure resolution with respect to holding the former White House Chief of Staff in criminal contempt for his obstruction and his indifference to the rule of law. And we will also condemn, hopefully in a bipartisan way, Islamophobia, and make it clear that attacks on anyone's religion are inconsistent with who we are as a nation and the principle of freedom of religion in a pluralistic society. That is what the United States of America is all about. It's a founding principle of this great country. Let me yield now to our distinguished vice chair and a distinguished member of the January 6th Select Committee. We're so thankful for their work and for Pete Aguilar's work on behalf of our democracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman mentioned, we're focused on the task at hand, but on behalf of the chairman and the Democratic caucus, we want to extend our condolences to all of those who suffered during the tornadoes. Incredibly tragic, and for those folks who are dealing with this during the holiday season, our hearts go out to them. As the chairman mentioned, we're dealing with some very weighty topics this week, but it's not lost on us the week that we had last week as well, dealing with the debt limit, passing the National Defense Authorization Act. This Congress continues to get things done. Yesterday, as the chairman mentioned, the Select Committee voted to hold the former Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, in contempt. Mr. Meadows has shown that he will not cooperate with the committee's work. And we are now asking our colleagues on the floor to pass the same vote to hold him in contempt. He has no problem sharing details of his interactions with the former president in his book, if you buy it for $25, but he does not want to come before the committee to have those same conversations. The chairman also mentioned that we're going to extend the full faith and credit of the United States, as well as dealing with a bill to combat Islamophobia. Topics that are weighty and important, and shows the work that we are doing on behalf of the American people as we sprint toward the end of the calendar year. We're focused on these issues because it's right for the American people. And, we would only hope with respect to the Islamophobia bill. Unfortunately, our Republican colleagues are not willing to hold their members accountable. And so, while they continue to spew hate, we're going to continue to legislate. And so, with that, we're happy to take some questions.
Can I ask for both of you, but specifically for Representative Aguilar, since he sits on the 1-6 committee, we have now seen with Steve Bannon's contempt of Congress how that's moving forward. There's a trial now set for July. Are there concerns about the timeline here for the committee to be able to get their work done if Democrats don't win the House again in 2022? I know that's theoretical, but if that happens, then the timeline will be cut off if Republicans don't allow the committee to continue its work. So can you talk about the timeline and what concerns you have about getting the information you need to put out a full report?
Yeah, I'll disagree with your political analysis, but let's talk about the work ahead. What we've said loud and clear is that we're going to generate a report. We're going to have public hearings. We're going to do all of that next calendar year. I'm not worried about the content and the quantity of the information that we're receiving. We continue to have robust cooperation from hundreds of individuals who have firsthand knowledge of the attack on the United States Capitol on the 6th and everything that preceded that, from the pressure campaign to the rallies on the 5th. All of that is within the scope of House Resolution 503 that we championed and worked toward. But we're having a lot of those conversations. We're hearing from a lot of witnesses, so our work is not going to be impeded. And so just because you see a couple people who were not cooperating, that's not accurate, because there are dozens and hundreds that are. And so we're going to continue to get that information, as evidenced by the information that Mark Meadows himself produced back last week when he was cooperating with the committee before the president told him not to cooperate in public, and then suddenly he stopped cooperating with us on the eve of his announcement of his book deal. So those are what we're dealing with, but we're pleased with the level of information, and there are going to be continued threads that we pull along the way.
Do you hope to have a report out before the 2022 midterms?
We'll have a report out next calendar year.
Yeah, I'll simply just add, there was a clear effort to overthrow the United States government on January 6th and in the weeks leading up to that fateful day. The January 6th Select Committee will get to the bottom of what happened, why it happened, and how do we prevent a violent attack on the Capitol and insurrection from ever happening again in our democracy.
I
Aaron?
also had a question for Mr. Aguilar on January 6th related stuff, if I may. What was the committee hoping to communicate by sharing the text messages between Mark Meadows and specifically the ones during the attack where people were trying to get in touch with him to get in touch with then President Trump to speak out? What was the committee trying to convey by sharing those messages?
What we're trying to convey is, our ultimate focus has been what happened on January 6th and what led up to January 6th. On the 5th, the rallies of the 5th, and the pressure campaign in December, utilizing the Department of Justice, the former president's attempts to utilize the Department of Justice to overturn the election. So that's what we wanted to focus on. Specific to those text messages, what we wanted to convey is that Mr. Meadows is in an important position to have knowledge of a lot of those facts. And he himself, by disclosing these, showed that they are not subject to privilege. And by the way, these were done on his personal device, which the Presidential Records Act requires information turned over to the archives. So all of those are important threads, but specific to these texts from members of Congress, and even texts on January 7th, which you saw displayed, where there was remorse for not being able to get it done on January 6th, which is, terribly tragic and just gets to the story that we want to convey in casting a light on this to make sure that this doesn't happen again. As the chairman mentioned, this assault on democracy that we all experienced, we have to ensure that it doesn't happen again, and that's part of our key focus here is to highlight that.
Can I ask a super quick follow-up? Are there any conversations still ongoing with him? Is there any chance he looks at the House vote today and changes his mind again, or is it your understanding that, he sort of made his...
We've been communicating with Mr. Meadows through his attorney. His attorney sent something out, I think even this morning. The committee remains, willing to listen to Mr. Meadows through his representative if he wants to reach out. But clearly, the focus has been, and what we've said consistently, it's a two-part test in order to show compliance with our work. One is the production of documents. The second is sitting for a deposition or interview. And so Mr. Meadows fulfilled one, and he did not fulfill the other. But if he's willing to remedy that, that's something that we would have to consider. But we have not received that offer today.
Certainly our hope that Mark Meadows will cooperate with this incredibly important investigation into the events on January 6th, but when the cult leader speaks, the cult members usually fall in line.
Thank you, Congressman. I'm wondering, regarding Representative Omar's Islamophobia bill, one, should we consider this bill to be a direct response by House Democrats to Lauren Boebert's comments? And two, given that the bill is more about anti-Muslim violence abroad, such as violence against Uyghurs in China or the Rohingya in Burma, is this an inadequate response to Boebert's Islamophobic comments?
There are two issues that we are addressing in terms of a response to the outrageous behavior of Congresswoman Boebert. There's the Islamophobia resolution that we hope will secure bipartisan, if not unanimous, support on the floor today. And second, what is being contemplated, as I understand it, is holding Lauren Boebert accountable through the appropriate vehicle that has been set forth in the House in terms of whether there are rules of the House that she has violated, and that is to be determined by the appropriate committee of jurisdiction moving forward.
Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's my question. So you're saying, is someone going to file a formal ethics complaint with the ethics committee?
I don't know.
That would trigger something? That seems to be what you're suggesting.
I don't know. But what I am suggesting is that the Islamophobia resolution is an important step to deal with the dynamics that are in front of us, but that the question needs to be evaluated moving forward as to whether there are other vehicles to hold her accountable moving forward for her outrageous behavior, and there's a variety of different ways that that can happen.
One quick follow-up to that before I get to my question. So does that mean that resolution removing Representative Boebert from her committees, as happened with Congressman Gosar's, is off the table at least for the immediate future this week?
I haven't been part of the specific discussions beyond what is getting ready to happen in terms of the Islamophobia resolution on the floor today. As I mentioned last week, when this leadership meeting occurred, I was at the funeral connected to the late, great Carrie Meek. I don't think, as far as I can tell, anything specific beyond the Islamophobia resolution has been ruled in or ruled out. That's still a discussion to be had as we move forward, but this is a decisive, important action to be taken today.
And then in New York City, the city recently passed a law which would allow undocumented migrants to vote in city elections. You represent New York City. Do you have any thoughts on that law?
Yeah, I support, well, when you say undocumented migrants, I think that's a mischaracterization of the legislation. The legislation that passed the city council would permit legal permanent residents to be able to vote in municipal elections, and the law permits a city to make that determination. We, of course, exist in a system of federalism. New York City has made that determination. It's a determination that I fully support.
This question is for Representative Aguilar. The committee yesterday highlighted, as you mentioned earlier, a text from a member of Congress to Mark Meadows, essentially apologizing for not getting the job done. I'm wondering why the committee decided not to reveal the identity of that member, or do you not know the identity?
I think that there's more to come, and the chairman has talked about this. The committee knows a lot of details and communication, but at this point, I don't think that that's relevant to where we are. I think it's just important to know that there were people here in the building as the attack was happening in real time, who knew Mr. Meadows, who were reaching out, who were on that floor with us, and were reaching out to Mr. Meadows. And as you mentioned, the text after, it's important to know that they were colleagues of ours who felt that way. But I don't think at this point it's important to know the names of the individuals. But when the chairman feels compelled to relay that information, I'm sure you'll be the first to know.
Is that last question?
On Build Back Better.
Last two. We'll go to Eve. Yeah.
Build Back Better, what is the expectation at this point? What are you hearing from Speaker Pelosi, understanding that you're waiting on the Senate? But
Yeah,
is the House ready to come back at any time?
The House is definitively ready to come back at any time to get the Build Back Better Act, to the extent that it is amended in part or in some form by the Senate, out of the House and to the President's desk. The Build Back Better Act is the third in a series of important bills that we have been working on this year in order to create millions of good-paying jobs, which has already occurred and will continue. Cut taxes for working families, low-income families, and middle-class families, which we will do as we extend the child tax credit that has benefited tens of millions of families with children across America. And we're going to lower costs for hardworking Americans in healthcare, in housing. We're going to lower energy costs, and of course, we're going to lower healthcare costs, particularly as it relates to driving down the high cost of life-saving prescription drugs by giving the federal government, through Medicare, the power to negotiate lower drug prices on behalf of older Americans. Giving the federal government that ability is something that former President Trump supported and other Republicans have supported because it is the right public policy, and it will lead to dealing with one of the issues that is greatly and adversely impacting the pocketbooks of the American people.
Quick follow-up to that. People tend to be pretty checked out over the holidays. Is there any concern if you pass this that you bury your own victory? Why not just wait until January when people are back at work and back paying attention to what's going on up here?
I think it's important for us, when the opportunity presents itself, to act as quickly as possible. And we will have an opportunity throughout the entirety of 2022 to talk about what we've done on behalf of everyday Americans, why we've done it, and why it's going to make life better for the American people, why it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and why it's going to cut costs for everyday Americans in a manner that will improve their quality of life. You can expect, and I'll yield to Pete on this, that House Democrats, in partnership with Senate Democrats and led by President Biden and the administration, will consistently talk about the challenges facing the American people and what we've done to decisively and compassionately address those challenges.
All I'll say is the American people continue to face challenges. Those challenges are going to exist on December 28th, on January 10th, on February 10th. As soon as this piece of legislation is ready, the House stands prepared to come back into session and to pass it. It's important. No matter the day, no matter the season, it's important that we do this as quickly as we can to deliver relief to the American people.
Last question.
On the debt limit, I mean, we have the debt deadlines tomorrow. Are you anticipating that the House will take up the debt ceiling extension today?
Well, we're waiting on the Senate, as is often the case, and we're prepared to move forward as soon as they send over a bill to us so we can make sure that we protect the full faith and credit of the United States of America. It's shameful that many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are willing to risk a default on our debt. And the reason why the debt ceiling has to be raised in this particular instance is because of spending that Donald Trump oversaw, including but not limited to the GOP tax scam, where 83% of the benefits went to the wealthiest 1% in America to subsidize the lifestyles of the rich and shameless for no apparent reason other than rewarding their friends, saddling us with approximately $2 trillion worth of debt. That's why we're in the situation that we're in right now. And yet, they're acting like this is all Joe Biden. 93% of the reason why we have to raise the debt ceiling, which we will do either today, hopefully, or as soon as the Senate sends the bill over, relates to spending by the previous administration. And yet the other side is unwilling to participate in undertaking their constitutional responsibilities. Why? Because this is a group where facts don't matter, hypocrisy is not a constraint to behavior, and they think shamelessness is their superpower. And that's what we're dealing with the modern-day Republican Party here in Washington, D.C. It's sad, but as Pete indicated, Democrats will continue to deliver for the people. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
The chairman wanted me to remind everybody, I have to go to another meeting, but I'm going to leave him here and he's going to sing some Christmas carols just to thank you all for the year of service to our press corps. Thank you guys. Enjoy a holiday season as well.
Although we may see you for Build Back Better.
We hope.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.